Peace. You are tuned into Edible Activists with your host and favorite edible activist, Melissa L. Jones. On this show, we honor Black people and their stories in food and agriculture, celebrating legacy, traditions, contributions, and creativity that all stem from the land. So tune in and let's get started. Peace. This is your host and favorite edible activist, Melissa L. Jones. Today's guest, Antoinette Johnson, is a dynamic storyteller, chef, and advocate whose work celebrates Black agriculture, food culture, and community. With a background in journalism and marketing, she pairs her love for storytelling with her culinary talent, a talent that led her to win America's Test Kitchen: The Next Generation. Drawing inspiration from her Black Southern roots, she's amplifying our foodways, honoring our heritage, and making sure our stories are seen and heard. Antoinette, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Melissa.
I'm so excited about this.
Me too. I love talking about food and culture and what we can do to be better foodies. So I'm really excited for this.
Y'all, you're in for a treat. And we're going to shout out socials and where to find her if this is your first time. But when I tell you, you have got to get into her content, you have got to get into her content, okay? But as you all know, we're always down for a good origin story. We always love to take it back if we can. I always say this, no path is linear, and we love to understand how folks got into this space. And so you come from a rich, very rich, Black Southern family, deeply rooted in North Carolina's food culture. So I want you to take us back to your beginnings. I know there's probably many stories you can bring us back to, but, how did growing up in such a rich food tradition shape your love for cooking, your storytelling lens, which is just beautiful, and ultimately the work that you do today?
Yeah, so I'm originally from North Carolina, Chapel Hill specifically. Both of my parents come from small towns. My mom is from Rocky Mount, North Carolina, and then my dad is from Randleman, North Carolina. So very small rural areas. And the thing is, I moved a lot growing up. So I'm from North Carolina. We lived in Raleigh, but I've also lived in Tennessee, Kentucky, South Carolina. And then when I was in second grade, we moved to upstate New York. So completely different everything, demographic, weather, food, everything. So I always say that having these different types of situations and moving so much, I think really makes me have a different lens because I know the difference. I know the contrast. I haven't always just been in one spot. And I feel like now with social media, when you go to different areas, it's a little bit easier for you to kind of fall in line because you know how people talk, we all kind of dress the same. Things are a little bit more homogeneous now. But I can remember in fourth grade moving, completely different culture shock, even though still in the same country. Which is so crazy to say, taking it back even just 15 years, how wild it was. Because 15 years ago I was in the fourth grade, but we just go slide past that. But no, seriously, just seeing the differences and then picking up on that, but seeing how much culture and how rich it is, right? I love being from the South, but I learned so much too, and being able to appreciate what I didn't have when I moved to upstate New York, but also being able to appreciate what's there too. So I think being able to see all of these different areas, experience different people, made it to where I'm really accepting of change and new things. And I feel like that's how you get to know an area, just jumping in and falling right in line with, the culture and things like that. So that's what I think that really sums up my journey. And like you said, nobody's journey is linear. I feel like every few years when people ask me that question, it kind of changes because you get a different perspective of how you've grown and what your priorities are. So I would say if you had to ask me now my origin story and what got me here, I would sum it up by saying being able to live in different places, experience different things, and wanting to share that with people.
Speaking of like living in different places, and that, gosh, what a change, and I'm sure even a culture shock. I mean, like as you alluded to, from the South to upstate New York, and upstate New York is beautiful, but completely different, opposite
Very,
ends of the spectrum, right?
yes, very.
Very different. And you've done some moving around. And I know I definitely like there's so many lanes I just want to like drive down. But you know, Kentucky. Have you lived in Kentucky before? Like, have you done some ag work there from like
Yes.
my research? So I was like, y'all, I'm on here and I'm talking to Antoinette, and I'm just like, now where are you? Because it seems like you've done some moving around, but that also just makes up like the richness of your work and your content, and being able, to like really diversify like all of these stories, but then still having obviously centered around this amazing Black lens and our traditions. And so I would love to tap into, your time in Kentucky and some of the ag work that you were immersed in there.
Absolutely. So moved to Kentucky when I was 15 years old. I think we moved in the summer before about to start my junior year. Didn't really know anything about Kentucky. Went to high school there, and then when I graduated, I went to the University of Kentucky. And my experience at the University of Kentucky was so rich, and it was so Black, despite what I think people might think. Like I was in a Black Student Union, NPHC, National Association of Black Journalists. I was in a sorority, a Black sorority. So it's like, even though people's perception of University of Kentucky, the state of Kentucky might be one way, my experience was so rich with culture. So I go to the University of Kentucky. I have so many friends who are in agriculture, who are in agriculture, who are in equine, who are in farming. So that's commonplace for me. I don't know if you're familiar with the group Manners. I think it's Minorities in Agriculture and Natural Resources. And they are an organization on college campuses. And anyone who has like an ag background, it's, let me give you the acronym, Minorities in Agriculture and Natural Resources. So anything kind of related with that. And when I was at the University of Kentucky, and they would go to their regional conferences, they would come back with trophies, winning everything. So when I think of people in agriculture, the first thing that pops into my head are people that look like me, because that's what I saw. So, I have that experience. I love UK. I love going back to our homecomings. I still have rich friendships there. And then, time, and then I graduate, go through different things, and then eventually find myself working for a CBD company. I don't know if you're familiar, or Kentucky is a major producer of hemp. So lots of hemp fields out there. And I got a marketing job and I was really excited. It's my first kind of like big girl corporate marketing job. The company that I worked for, like a leading force in hemp technology. They're based in Georgetown, but they have offices in Australia, Philadelphia. I'm like, I've made it. This is going to be amazing. They did pharmaceutical grade CBD products, and they sold it to independent pharmacies. So I'm on the marketing side. I'm able to go to the farms, learn about agriculture, learn about the history of hemp in Kentucky. I'm loving it. But the only thing was, I never really saw people that looked like me. And I think sometimes as Black people, it's so interesting for us to just navigate this world because our reality isn't always what we experience. So, like, I would go into work and I would be like, I know this isn't right. I know this isn't a real depiction because 30 minutes down the road at the University of Kentucky, I know so many Black people in this industry. So that was very interesting to kind of realize. But with that, it made me want to seek out like, where are the Black people in agriculture in this state? So I I like to think of myself as like a very, how do I want to put this? I like to be a conscious consumer, but I understand there is no, ethical consumption under capitalism. So I do the best that I can, but I do encourage people, especially Black people, like a lot of times you have to seek out what you want to find because it's not always going to be in your face. So long story short, did some research and looking around, and I came across this company called Black Soil KY, and they are a women funded and women ran nonprofit. And their goal is to bring Black people in Kentucky back to their heritage of Black farming. So I found this company and I connected with them, and I can't take any credit, right? I'm just a consumer. I just shop with them. But seeing this made me realize like, what I thought or what they tried to tell you about Black people not being involved, that's not true. That's clearly not true. And not that it's not true now, but like even when you look back in the history, it's never been true. So that kind of really just kind of kicked off, and this was around 2020. So this is really kind of kicked off my like wanting to find out what's happening, what's going on. I've always been a big fan of history and being able to connect how history connects to today. And I just feel so blessed to have found a really good community in Kentucky. Right. I wish I'm not, like I said, I'm just a consumer. I'm just someone who found it. But I feel like when you are a consumer, it's so important to share it. So I'm just the mouthpiece of what's going on. But I do think that that's important, especially for Black consumers. If you are passionate about supporting Black businesses, when you see something that you like, tell people about it and broadcast it. So that kind of sums up my work that I've done in Kentucky. I don't know if that answers the question.
No, it does. And now I need a flight to Kentucky because I got to meet this amazing group.
Oh yes. Oh yes. I There are so many great organizations. Soul Feast Week. In June, they do a full week celebrating Black agriculture in Kentucky. It is amazing. They have their Soulteenth Week with Herb Fest, which is a big outdoor festival, multiple private dinners throughout the week that you can go supporting Black agriculture. They do tours of a Black-owned farm that's there. It's a great way to experience Kentucky if you've never experienced it before.
That's how I want to experience Kentucky, y'all.
You gotta come. It's in June. It's amazing. It's
I
amazing.
listen, with my boots on and everything, whatever, my whole gear. I love that so much. Thank you for painting that. I mean, that just sounds incredible. And listen, like we know that there are HBCUs and communities of us that exist everywhere. There isn't a place where we're not, but I'm glad that when you got to connect Kentucky, you found your folks. You know where you wanted to go to school. Like we're gonna find our people regardless. So
Absolutely.
and just the path that it led down, like that's incredible. um Antoinette, you got some cooking skills, obviously, because you've done some big things, and you just have you touched just about every spoke on like this food wheel, but it's never, it's always so much more to learn. But how did you land, on America's Test Kitchen? Like that's a big deal.
Thank you. It's so crazy. So, I'm a food content creator. I've been posting since my daughter, her birthday is actually Friday. She'll be 10. But thank you. I started, oops, did I freeze? Okay. I started posting when she was born. So I've been a content creator for 10 years. And I first started posting just like healthy eating, but it kind of evolved. I had my healthy eating phase, my vegan phase, my homesteading phase. But at the end of the day, I realized, oh, I love cooking. Like that is something I really love and I'm passionate about. So I'm just a content creator online. And then I have my regular, job that I do. But one day my aunt, she sends me the Instagram post for their casting for the show. So she sends it to me. She's like, you need to apply. So I'm like, okay, I'll apply. I think the next day passes. And then she messages me again and she's like, did you apply yet? You need to apply. And I'm like, okay, let me stop what I'm doing. I'm gonna apply now. And I remember I applied and I heard back. I think I applied, submitted my application on a Friday, and I heard back from them on a Monday that they were interested. But I want to say this because if you ever go on like a TV show for a competition, it's a very long process. You have to do, they do background checks, psych evals. You have to do different rounds of interviews. But before we were going to leave, I found out that I had become an alternate. So I wasn't even supposed to be a main cast member. I think we were supposed to, I can't remember the dates, but I know we were supposed to leave like on a Monday. I found out on maybe like that Wednesday before that I was going to be an alternate. I was heartbroken, crushed. I remember I called my mom crying. I was going to be able to fly up there, but they're like, you'll just stay in the room. If something happens, you'll come out. But like really heartbroken, devastated. And then the producer calls me that Friday and she's like, hey, we want to let you know you're no longer going to be an alternate. You're going to be a full cast member. So be prepared to have your 10 outfits and all of this. I was like, oh, wow. Okay. Girl, I went to go get my hair braided that day. I was like, let me figure out what outfits I'm going to wear. Like, this is why you have to stay ready so you don't have to get ready. But, lesson learned. But it was just an amazing experience. And I think going it or being introduced to the experience from that way, being the alternate and then coming into it, when I finally made it onto the show, like our first episode filming, I think I just had so much gratitude. I was just so happy to be there that I think that resulted in how I performed. And every episode wasn't perfect. I didn't cook sometimes things happen in the kitchen. But I think having that experience really set me up to win, and I think sometimes we need to be okay with hyping ourselves up and bragging. So I appreciate you bringing this up and giving me my props, because sometimes I'm not always the first one to give me my props. So I won. And with that, I got a book deal and a grand prize, and I'm a test cook on America's Test Kitchen now, and a chef. Like I went from home chef to real chef.
I know that's right. Okay. That is, y'all see just the talent that exists. Oh my gosh. That is, I can't even imagine what that experience entailed, like would you do it again? Would you do something,
Good.
similar all over again? Like was
Yeah,
it was it obviously I would, don't want to speak for you, ask
yeah.
was it worth it, but like would you do something like that all over again? I mean, that is like top notch. Congrats. Congrats.
Thank you. I would. It was so life changing for me. It took me out of my comfort zone. We filmed for 4 weeks, and you film almost every day. 12-hour days. You got to be ready 6. You might not leave till 6. It's very emotional, right? You meet all these people and you build bonds with them, and then they leave and they go home. It's high pressure, but it was life changing for me. It really was. It helped me learn a lot about myself, about what I can handle. And really see myself too and all that I can accomplish. So I would definitely do it again.
Oh my goodness. Gosh, I congrats. Like that's
Yeah.
just so big. That's so big. Um, Antoinette, I don't know how you do it all. I mean, like your food content is out of this world. I mean, that is a lot of production, a lot of research, a lot of writing, a lot of like retaining the information and your probably social media scheduling. I love it, but I know that it is not a picnic, So I'm curious, like what is like your day to day? That's a lot. Like you be dropping content and great content, y'all. Let me just say that. We'll get to the socials later. Just hold on for it. Hold on tight. We're still talking.
Thank you. I appreciate that because it was not something that happened overnight. My background is in digital marketing, so I do have some background when it comes to doing social work. And then around the pandemic, I started freelancing and working with business owners directly. So it's like, though that wasn't my everyday, creating social media plans for people, creating full marketing campaigns, it's always different when you do it for yourself. So figuring that out, but also figuring out like, what do I want my voice to be? I started off just posting food recipes, and I love that content. But I have a degree in journalism, and I've always felt like people have stories, and their stories need to be told. So I knew that I wanted to do more with my voice than just give people a recipe. I wanted there to be some education in there because there has to be. I'm a Black woman in a kitchen. There's imagery with that, there's history behind that, there's so much that has to be talked about that I didn't just want to give people recipes. I wanted to say something a little bit more. So I really do appreciate when you give me these compliments, because I was very scared to transition from the food content to the food history and to make that pivot. And I feel like now on social media you hear people talking about that, like not just being niche down, talking about different topics. And it can be frightening because you know it works, you know how to do that. So completely deciding to shift my content to being full history, food history focused, and like culture based and a little bit of news thrown in there too, was scary. But I'll say once I really leaned into it, creating the content became very easy. I felt like it was a lot more difficult when I didn't know the lane, or I was trying to juggle the lane of cooking this and doing that. But it's like once I decided, no, I'm leaning into food history and culture content, it became a lot easier. Which is it's so wild because I was doing it for so long, it was so difficult. And I think that's just a testament to like really knowing your purpose and what you're supposed to do, and how once you are focused, things just happen a lot easier.
I mean, it's like you found your rhythm.
Yeah, for
That
sure.
rhythm was like, this is it. So I'm with you. And I I understand being being hesitant trying anything new, but especially, focusing on like the history part. First of all, there are folks on social media who are just waiting to come for you for any content, right?
They
And
like
I'm
kids.
sure that they do. And it's just like, it's their full-time job. Like they just be waiting for folks to drop a piece of content that they don't agree with. And it's
Yes,
like, okay.
no, for real.
But I love that you found your rhythm, and obviously even more so, it's not obviously not just me doing this work. There are plenty of others, like obviously you included, and it's so important for us to continue to tell the stories and repeat and repeat and repeat. And even if like that is just the repetition is so important, and just the distribution is so important. And so I'm incredibly grateful for your platform, because we need this. We need this great, always, like in my work too, a large catalog of voices, and that's there and it's archived digitally, and want to do more work, to archive it digitally, because they can't get lost.
No, and I love how you said that too, voices, because I feel like people say, "Oh, it's oversaturated," and I disagree when it comes to Black food history. One, we can never talk about it enough. It's been suppressed for so long.
Hello.
Yes, it's like we need more, but also we all have our own different lens. So how I'm going to look at something is going to be different from you, from someone else, and I think that's so rich because again, with Black voices being suppressed, all of ours matter, and it's so important to show that there are different viewpoints.
Because I can't do what you do. And I don't want to do what you do, because you do it great, right? And I feel like I do what I do great, even on the
Exactly.
days when I don't feel great. So, everybody, it's enough for everyone out
Exactly.
here.
I agree.
So, speaking of all this wonderful content that you've been dropping, I recently, actually came across the 5-part series that you did, which was super powerful, on the 5 steps to, how to stigmatize a food, centering watermelon specifically. And we are in the season, Antoinette. Like we are in August as of right now as we have this conversation. And for those down south, watermelons probably started popping up earlier, obviously, but it is the season of watermelon. And I definitely wanted to center part of our conversation, just really unpacking that powerful series that I really enjoyed. And you said, food only becomes stigmatized when it becomes threatened. And oh my goodness gracious. Oh my gosh. So I really just want you to just walk us through that powerful statement and connecting it to the five, to that series and the 5 steps that you had mentioned, because that is super powerful. And obviously, watermelon wasn't the only crop. There are others, but we're going to center watermelon. It's the season, and that's what your series was about. So let's unpack that some more.
Sure. Thank you. So, what really inspired that series was my daughter had came home and she told me that somebody on the playground had made a joke about her eating watermelon. And she's, I want to say, the only Black girl. If there are other Black girls at her school, maybe it's three of them. So it is. So it was a very. It had me feeling more upset than it had her feeling more upset. I'll say that. But and when I get into those modes, I go down my rabbit holes and I have to learn, I have to get the knowledge because I need to teach her. She didn't understand. And I didn't want her to be in a situation where she could have somebody tell this joke about her or to her and she feel like, oh, well, I can't eat watermelon anymore. I can't enjoy something that I like. It was almost heartbreaking for me to see how my ancestors were kind of taken for a ride with watermelon, to see how none of it was true, to see how the jokes that people make today on the playground, kids who are 10, 11 have no concept. They're just picking up things that they learned, believe it's true, all came from nothing. Nothing, the stereotype around watermelon, none of it is true. None of it is tangible. It's all propaganda. So I wanted to tell this story. And with this series, I wanted to do it in a way that was fun, in a way that caught people's attention, that wasn't just talking about watermelon. Because I think by now we all know the stigma that comes with watermelon. Everyone knows how Black people were making money from watermelon. So it was stigmatized to where then Black people couldn't make this money anymore. And then you then kind of go into like, Mm, it just being a joke, but I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into it and really break it down. So that's kind of what inspired the stigma or inspired the series.
There are still jokes made around watermelon, right? And there's still, like, and all sorts of jokes of like, oh, that's slave food, or
Mhm.
that's or this thing about like black folks like don't eat watermelon, or my family's from the South, you are from the South. It Listen, dessert with slices of watermelon on the table, okay?
Yes, 4th of July when we were outside, cookout, watermelon. I had pictures of my little sister, watermelon all over her. Like, that's a thing.
Exactly.
It is a thing.
Exactly. So I know I thought I think it's a great series, and I would love to actually see more from, black folks like in this food space actually speak more to it. And there are actually some that totally do, especially when it comes to watermelon season. They're just like,
Yeah.
we gonna, these myths, we gonna give y'all some real history around watermelon. Like this is what it is. And so and folks need to know that like this was a crop that black folks were making money off of watermelons, but
Honestly, yeah. And then also talking about the different ways that it was stigmatized too. So like if it just blows my mind seeing the different ways that it was stigmatized, but completely changed. So I think in the series, and I read a lot of articles that talked about, okay, you first have Black people being enslaved, and watermelon was used as a way for the enslaver to kind of placate their slaves. So, okay, they're out here, let's give them some watermelon. That's fine. It makes them happy. A lot of the times, too, watermelon was used as a way to make the slave masters feel good about themselves. Like, I give my slaves watermelon. They love it. It's great. Look how great I am. Yes, I'm enslaving these people. Yes, I'm taking away their autonomy, but I'm giving them watermelon. They're laughing and playing. It's great. And you see that shift change when Black people become free and then they start to grow their own watermelon. And you see, you see how it went from a crop that everybody loved, that it was great, to, well, anybody that grows watermelon, I mean, it's an easy crop to grow. It doesn't really take lots of skill. It's not really impressive to grow watermelon. If you could grow watermelon because it's easy, you're lazy because you're not really doing anything. That doesn't make any sense, does it? But in the history, also learning that watermelon, not just in America, but around the globe, has always had a stigma to it. And I think that is what really kind of made me say, oh, it's not necessarily about the person, it's how this food thing can be used. And when we think of food, we think of something that should nourish us. That should be its only purpose, or it's only the only way we think about it, nourishment. But when we see something that should be nourishing us, but it can also be harmful when it's taken or placed in a different way, I found that so fascinating. So if anybody's not familiar, watermelon was seen because of how you eat it. You usually have to eat it in community. You usually have to spit out the seeds. It's juicy, it's messy, and that was seen as uncivilized. And we could go down a rabbit hole talking about the idea of civilized, being civilized in eating, using one's hands, not using one's hands, cutlery, what that all comes from. Um, but we won't, we got an hour. But I find it so interesting because, again, it comes from nothing. It comes from nothing. And it was made up. And I don't think people know that. I think people really do think, if you're eating something with a fork and a knife, then it's fancy food. Anything that has to be eaten with your hands is not. That makes no sense. If a food is sweet, juicy, delicious, easy to grow, can feed lots of people, nobody wants it. You have to have some form of exclusivity to it. And as I'm learning all of these things, it's like I'm seeing such a parallel with other things in life. I'm seeing such a parallel with like how things that everybody can have access to, they're not cool anymore. Or you see people trying to change it to stigmatize things. I think of like social clubs. I think of just like in your everyday when you go on vacation, paying for VIP, being exclusive, being in areas that people can't get into. it was like I was reading about watermelon and then I also saw so many parallels. So I felt like food is such a way to bring us together. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about it in watermelon and in food, but also let's try to make those connections so people can see how it can also happen in real life. And maybe they'll be able to maybe see a little bit of themselves from learning about watermelon.
Y'all got to check out that series. And listen, you just continue to unpack it, Antoinette. I know there's so much more to it, and you added some
Yeah.
additional context. But I love when Black folks start rolling out like all the facts behind watermelons. It's like it's always our time, and I'm like, this is our time to shut down, all the myths and bring up, back up our history behind watermelon. And like, this is it. Like, again, that distribution, that sharing of the stories and repetition over and over and over again. So again, I really, appreciated seeing the series. And again, it's the season, y'all. Go check that out. I kind of want to switch gears just a bit. Well, we're still in food, obviously, always, but just from wanted to, from your perspective, what barriers do you see for Black food entrepreneurs specifically trying to break into, especially major retail spaces, which are just like I know here in DC. I mean, I'm just seeing, and that's actually from anybody who owns, like especially food and stuff, like just gone, like shutting down shop. But what barriers do you see for us, and like what's actually working to, what is working to break those barriers down?
Yeah, I think the biggest barrier is going to be meeting the customer where they are and understanding how they shop because we live in such an age of convenience. We're so used to Amazon, get it there the next day, pick up your groceries, get it fast, get it fast. And with a lot of Black businesses being independent, sometimes getting that straight from the consumer can take some time. So that's why I feel like I don't want to take all the responsibility from the Black business owner, but I do feel like us as customers, as consumers, we have to understand if we want to see us in the products that we buy, we have to be a little bit more intentional about how we buy things. So I think also it's kind of like meeting halfway, right? So if I have a product and I want to get it to my customer base, where do they shop? Really understanding how they shop, and that's also a little bit of the marketing side too and doing a little bit of market research, like where do they shop, how do they shop, and how can we meet each other together? Because that's hard. Like if you can convincing someone who can grocery pick up something and get their groceries delivered within 2 hours, when you have a product that you can only ship out, and let's say you have a shipping schedule where it takes 3 days after, you have that time. People want their stuff now. So I think it's also ooh, I don't want to say fighting capitalism, but also kind of understanding to the history behind why do we get things so fast? How did we get to this place of hyper consumerism and unlearning that so that it becomes easier? It doesn't feel like such an inconvenience to get something in 4 days from a Black owned business.
I mean, listen, as someone who wants some things overnight, like I can't even like, but it's so true. And do you feel like in support of that, is it more like research that needs to be done to like understand like what the customer needs are? And also part of like a lot more marketing behind it, like really getting into the minds of the customer to connect with that product because some folks don't care that it might be Black owned. Some folks don't care that it's organic. Some folks don't care that it's, hyper locally sourced. Like I care about most of those things, but how can you reach a person like me or actually even get to someone else and convert them over? That's a hard job.
It's very hard and it takes time and it takes money. Marketing, like before you even launch your product, all the things that and sometimes it doesn't happen because I always say you gotta do what you gotta do, you gotta execute. So sometimes it might not be 100% perfect, but that's better than never putting it out. So, sometimes you don't do all of that, but like it's important. But I understand that Black businesses, of course, don't get that funding and are a bit of a disadvantage. So some people might disagree. I feel like I give Black business owners grace. I understand what they're against. And I think education, of course, on both ends, right? So the business owner understanding and getting educated about their consumers understanding how supply chains work and how running a business when you're small works. I think we all think we know how a business runs, but a lot of times we're thinking like Fortune 500 companies, like on a large scale, but a small business is going to be very different. But I also think and this is why I love your platform, having conversations about food and capitalism and our society and consumer culture as well. Because I think if we talked about that, the whole consumer versus the business owner, we could understand each other a little more. I don't know if you've seen, but like the discourse between like the founders and the black consumers, I hate to see the I hate to see the turmoil between the two. It's like we shouldn't be fighting each other.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely real. And I'm like, sometimes just pull the wool over my eyes, like, guys. But
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's real. And, obviously, like, we don't have the resource. And I hate saying that. I mean, it just is a reality. It's not something that I want to keep affirming, but it is
Yeah.
just a hard reality. And I think the other $1 million question is like once we do get the resources, right, how do we continue to churn it and like keep it and build on top of it, and it not just like continual expenses and expenses. So like there folks have the answers, but just to be able to sustain the business too. So it's one thing to like, understand who your customer is and start the food business, and then after you do all that, obviously like the work gets harder to sustain it. And so I $1 million question, and there are great folks out here doing it, and there's some that is just like still like struggling, but thank you for that. I just wanted to know your your perspective behind that. Antoinette, in your research and storytelling, what has been the most jaw-dropping Black invention or contribution to food and ag that you've uncovered? Because we everywhere. We do every daggone thing.
Yes, you know what? I think, you're gonna make me have to think back, but I did a series where I shared a Black History food fact every day in February. And two that really stood out to me, there was a woman, and I hate that I cannot remember her name, but she had a bakery and an inn in Virginia during slavery times. And her pies were famous, and the part that really struck out to me was that this is when Black people were still enslaved. I think a lot of times we think our history only starts after emancipation, and it's important to know, no, during slavery there were Black people doing great amazing things. Let's make sure we talk about that. There was also another Black man, and, I'm glad I'm doing this because now I'm realizing I need to do better with memorizing these names. I'm not practicing what I'm preaching. But there was another Black man. He had an oyster house in New York City, and it was like a big deal, a big fancy restaurant. And again, he was a restaurateur. People were known for his oysters, or people came around because he was known for selling these oysters. And again, another story that was I didn't know about this. When you hear about oysters, you never hear about, this man's story. So those were the thing. I think figuring out and realizing all the amazing things we did, even during being enslaved.
I don't know how you retain information. I'm giving you grace, so don't feel bad for not knowing the names. And it's like charge our heads and not our hearts, y'all. It's so much. So I don't even know how you retain the information that you do with all the food content. So show us love. Show Antoinette some grace, y'all. But we're gonna drop the handle so you can dive into all her great food content. And so I no, thank you for that. I mean, it's amazing because we existed every single where, like we're in spaces and touching things and seeing architecture and just seeing great big things that have been built and have been here for, decades and centuries, and like the Black man or the Black woman did it. And so it's like we could probably go on for days. I'm sure, like, yes, a list exists of like all the inventions. And so it is just continues to be just jaw dropping to me, and just in amazement of all the things that we have built, and a reminder that this nation was built on the backs of our great ancestors, and let's never forget that. So most of probably what you touched was built by our ancestors.
Because I feel like it's taught to us that being enslaved was working in the fields. That was all the work that you did. And it's like Black people were craftsmen, artisans, painters. I remember when I learned that, like a lot of the portraits that you were seeing of these Southern white families were painted by Black people. Like, what do you mean? And I think that too kind of sparked me wanting to really focus on the kitchen, because if Black people were always cooking, always the ones in these positions of service, whether while we were enslaved, whether it's, the 50s and 60s working in houses as housemaids, but all of these inventions for, box cakes and all of these quick kitchen things and all these inventions, Betty Crocker, were discovered by white people, but how they weren't in the kitchen? How did they invent all these things if they weren't there? They did it. I feel like you on mute, but I still heard you. They did it. So it's like, and you think, well, people wouldn't lie because the information's there. They know I can go and look. They wouldn't lie, but it's like they will because people don't go back and look. And I think that's why it's so important to highlight it because it's a lie. It's not true.
Which is why, media folks, great media folks, and, chefs and storytellers like Antoinette and Why Edible Activists and all the other amazing platforms exist.
Yes.
Competition, distribution of our stories, publishing. Like, yes, we were going to continue to push out these stories and remind folks. So thank you. We're going to wrap up in just a few moments. But Antoinette, I need to know what are some like signature dishes that you like to whip up?
Yes. So I'm a barbecue girl. I'm from North Carolina, so I am accustomed to Eastern style Carolina barbecue, the vinegar based. But I will say when I was on American Test Kitchen, my recipe that won me the $100,000 was my instant pot barbecue burnt ends. And I love a kitchen shortcut. I love reading vintage cookbooks. So I have my like food history culture side, but I love being in the kitchen. I love cooking and crafts and doing all of that. So I get a lot of my inspiration from vintage cookbooks, and like that kind of quick, do it fast 1960s era of being in the kitchen. So if you know anything about burnt ends, they take hours to cook. It's traditionally made with brisket, which is an expensive cut of meat. I make mine with chuck roast. I do them in the Instant Pot, finish them off under the broiler, make my own barbecue sauce and barbecue rub. You can get it done in about hour 20 minutes. So that probably is my favorite. I love being in the kitchen, right? And I love doing different types of cooking, but I feel like something that's a little easy but still tastes good, that's my lane.
When you said vintage cookbooks, what instantly came to mind? So, a few months ago, my big mom taught me how to make a German chocolate cake, right? Like I come from a lineage of cooks and bakers. German, I don't know. She cooks a ton of cakes, and I decided to try the hardest cake
I was
apparently.
about to say, you picked the big one.
We were there all night, and I know my grandmother was like, "Listen, girl, like, girl." So she had this cookbook, and it was because like I was like, Big Mom, like, some things she just knows how to do just because our Southern roots, like they just cook and that's what they do. But she had this book. It was called Southern Belle South something. I don't know if you're familiar, but it was all these recipes, I mean, thick, they're a volume. So back like in Mississippi and I guess other parts of the South, like Bell South, like the telephone company, they used to
Mhm.
collect all these recipes. And they're very much so like, short, easy, but like home cooked, like easy, good food. And that
Yeah.
just immediately came to me. And I'm like, I need to grab a few of these. And I love coming across a vintage cookbook, especially, when it's one written by a Black woman. Like
Mm.
specifically, I love it. And so I love that that is just something that you always, that you have a love or fascination for vintage cookbooks. I mean, I would love for them to be a staple in my home.
You
So I
can learn so
feel
much.
like I'm doing something.
Oh, for real. And you can learn so much too, like just from looking at the ingredients used, it gives you a feel for like whatever time that was, whether if they're using olive oil or vegetable oil or like margarine or lard, depending there. It's just So fascinating. I love it. I could read them all day.
Yes, didn't even think of that. Thank you for saying that because now I'm gonna be looking what type of ingredients. Like there's a certain flour that my big mom used to use for her rolls. I mean, I'm talking about famous rolls, like rolls. Y'all don't got no rolls to go with the spaghetti. They're all gone. They have flown off the table. And there's because they don't say, as my other grandmother would say, they don't make things like they used to, and she's right. They do not.
No, very true.
It's different, but there's a specific flour or no, a specific yeast she used to use that like you literally have to like buy it off eBay or something like that. Like they just don't sell it. And so now like when I look at Adventures Cookbook, I'm going to be looking at those ingredients, Antoinette. That's actually like just a really great suggestion to see like what did that ingredient list call for because modern day cooking, no, like no shade. I love it all.
Yeah.
Like the ingredients are totally different. So that's a good call out. Thank you.
Yeah, that no problem. That too, and like um the process, because I have one cookbook, it's an older cookbook, I think it came out in the 80s, and they were talking about smoking, and they're like, you'll have to go to a specialty shop to get the hickory wood chips and then probably place an order in the catalog. I'm like, girl, nobody is, I could not imagine cooking in the 80s. I don't know if I would survive. I need my stuff today, and I think that's so interesting too, because it makes me think about the women during that time who still even had to work, who still had to take care of their family and were expected to put these meals on the table without the convenience we have today. I think that's amazing. Another call out to Black women in the kitchen.
Salute. Oh my goodness. So, Antoinette, this has been a pleasure. I do have one finale question though, because while we're on the topic of food, how do you fry your catfish?
Okay. So I'm gonna get my catfish. I'm gonna go through the full rundown because I did some a few weeks ago. And I'm not gonna lie, I do use the pre-made breading, but I've been trying different ones to see which one I liked. So the last time I used the Old Bay, but not really my fan. I like the brand Andes, Andys, and I like the spicy seafood one. So I do a mixture of yellow mustard and egg and mix that together. Only seasoning I'm going to use is Old Bay, maybe a little bit of salt, depending, because sometimes I feel like you need a little bit of salt with the Old Bay. So I'm gonna season my catfish, put it in the mixture with the mustard and the egg, put it in the breading, the Andes breading. I'm gonna let it sit for a little bit. One thing when you fry, you want to make sure that the flour isn't dry. So you want to make sure that this flour is moistened. So, let that moisten and then drop it in my oil. And I did a video about it. You got to fry it hard. You got to fry it hard. Okay. Catfish is one of those fish. It is funny because when I was, I was laughing on the inside when we started and you talked about how people always have something to say about food content. Cause I can remember I posted a video about frying catfish hard and so many people were like, I don't like mine fried hard. I'm like, you're just talking. Cause who likes, it doesn't taste the same. You have to fry it hard. You have to. The texture, it's not going to be the same.
Do not give me a soft piece of catfish. I am sending back. I want it crispy and hard. Period.
Absolutely. It has to be. And then I feel like that too, it takes a little bit longer, right? Typically, if you're frying like maybe a flounder or a catfish, 5 minutes tops. But if you're frying catfish, it's going to be in there for a while, flip it. And then when I take it out, hit it with a little bit of Old Bay, hot sauce, of course, Texas Pete. I'm from North Carolina. And then that's how I do mine. That's how I
Oh,
do
listen, I love hearing different ways. Like if I don't know how to do anything else, like I can fry some catfish. And like my auntie, she uses the fish fry, but like she buys it and she mixes it with like other things. So she kind of like makes her own
mine. Yeah.
concoction and stores it. And she does use mustard sometimes. And catfish is like can be a little meaty. So you do need to fry it a little bit longer, but like she's very specific. Like she's only getting a certain like ounces of fillets because she likes like the small pieces because you don't have to fry them as long, but and they're not too thick. So I love hearing how people fry fish. I love fried fish, period. I don't care how it's fried as long as it's good, it's crispy, it's hot. Don't give
Yes.
me no soft piece of fish.
I'm with you. And it's so funny because when I moved to upstate New York, we got invited to a fish fry. It was a Catholic fish fry. And I can remember my parent, I'm a kid, but I can remember my parents being like, this isn't the type of fish for you. This is not what we thought it was going to be. So that was an interesting culture shock of being invited to that. But also still seeing, fish fries community, regardless, right? Even if it might be a little bit different, people still use it to come together. So I thought that was cool.
Listen, that's how we could kick off the first day of a reunion. Friday night fish fry.
Can I get an invite?
Absolutely.
Love
The
to.
process of planning it for next year. You are more than welcome to come.
I love seeing how Black people come together in different ways. So I
Absolutely.
love
I planned my family's reunion last year for 200 people down in the country in Mississippi. Yes.
Girl,
Yes.
kudos to you for keeping it alive. I love that.
Yes. I drug my feet, Antoinette. I drug my feet this year. I didn't know I was ready, but you know what? The ancestor says, keep it going, keep it going. We need you.
Yeah.
So we're revving it back up. Antoinette, it has been such a pleasure. I want you to tell folks how to find your book,
Yes.
your socials, how to just to keep up with like all the great things that you're doing. So
Yes. So the easiest way, you can go to my website, Antoinette G. Johnson, and my Instagram, Antoinette G. Johnson there. From there, you'll find links to my YouTube page. I have one for my cookbook, Mostly Homemade, that is available now on Amazon. And then I have my Mostly Homemade Instagram and Mostly Homemade YouTube, where we do homemaking made simple without the pressures. I call it we're doing stuff from scratch, kind of, so no pressure homemaking. And then I also did launch my new YouTube page, The Cultural Bite, where we talk about food culture and things that are happening, day to day. So on the first episode, we talked about the effects of the Tesla restaurant opening up, giving some, background there. We talked about the use of AI in food and Black businesses using AI generated food to promote their products and, the effects that have on consumers. So tackling food, of course, the history, but keeping it a little bit more to like what's going on right now today. So that's where you can find me. Easiest way, again, website, AntoinetteGJohnson.com.
well, y'all heard it here. Thank you again, Antoinette, and thank y'all for tuning in. Peace. Thank you for listening to Edible Activists. You can find today's episode on Spotify, iTunes, and Simplecast, and follow along on all social media platforms at Edible Activists for updates. Want to support this platform? You can do so by purchasing our commerce or connecting with me about media partnerships at www.edibleactivist.com. In the words of Baba Tariq Adunu, there is no culture without agriculture. Peace.